All right. Go ahead, Philip. Title of tonight's message is Seeking a Move from God. The first, we're going to go to Romans chapter 8, verse 28. There it says, "And we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are the called according to his purpose." Do you see this happening in your life? Do you see things working for your good and according to his purpose? Sometimes it's easy to see these things. Sometimes it's not very easy. You might ask, why can't we see these things happening all the time? My answer to that would be, what else are you seeing? In Matthew chapter 6, verse 22, Jesus talks about vision. He says, "Your eye is like a lamp that provides light for your body. When your eye is healthy, your whole body is filled with light. But when your eye is unhealthy, your whole body is filled with darkness. And if this is the light you think you have is actually darkness, how deep that darkness truly is." What Jesus is talking about here is what are you focused on shapes your life. Are you looking through a lens of darkness, or are you looking through the lens of light and life? Looking through a worldly lens where doubt, unbelief, fear, despair, possibly past trauma, worry, anxiety, heartache rules over you? Or are you looking through a spiritual lens where God can move and give you victory over all these things that hold us back in the world? Are you believing what you see and what you hear around you? Or are you choosing to walk by faith and see the Lord is always working for your good? See, there are things that we can focus on that keep us out of the presence of the Lord. Doubt and unbelief keep you out of the room where Jesus will perform miracles. Example of this is in Matthew chapter 9, verses 23 and 20 through 25. This is where Jesus raises a little girl from the dead. It says, "When Jesus came into the ruler's house and saw the flute player and noisy crowd wailing, he said to them, 'Make room, for the girl is not dead, but sleeping.' And they ridiculed him. But when the crowd was put outside, he went in and took her by the hand and told the girl to arise." See, he didn't perform this miracle with all the doubters and unbelievers present. He told them to leave. The only ones that could remain were those who had the faith to see past what they were looking at. Look past what the world said about the little girl. They said she was dead and there wasn't any hope. But instead, the parents looked towards Jesus with expectation for him to move. We need to be like the girl's parents and not allow the influence and views, limitations of the fallen world around us hinder our faith in what God can do for us in any situation. Seeking the Lord will bring us closer to God. It also brings God closer to us as he stops what he is doing to answer our call. Let's go to Mark chapter 5, verse 24 through 34. This is a story about the woman with the issue of blood. And I'm going to read through the whole thing, so bear with me. Jesus went with them, and all the people followed, crowding around him. The woman in the crowd had suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding. She had suffered a great deal from many doctors, and over the years she had spent everything she had to pay them, but she hadn't gotten any better. In fact, she'd gotten worse. She had heard about Jesus, so she came up behind him through the crowd and touched his robe. For she thought to herself, "If I can just touch his robe, I will be healed." And immediately, the bleeding stopped. She could feel in her body that she had been healed from this terrible condition. Jesus realized at once that healing power had gone from him, so he turned around the crowd and asked, "Who touched me?" The disciples looked at him. "Look at this crowd pressing against you. How can you ask who touched me?" But he kept looking on the crowd to see who had done it. Then the frightened woman, trembling at the realization of what had happened to her, came and fell on her knees in front of him, told him what she had done. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith had made you well. Go in peace. Your suffering is over." There's several things and several messages that can be spoken about throughout this passage of Scripture, but I have a couple points to make tonight. Points I want to make is she didn't accept her condition. She didn't accept what the doctors told her. She didn't accept the fact that they said she couldn't be healed despite any of their efforts. She didn't allow fear and despair to steal her away from her victory over her illness. She said, "The ways of the world cannot help me, so I'm looking to the Lord for Jesus for my healing." The other point is I want to make is Jesus was moving to go help someone else. He didn't set out on this particular day to find this woman who had an issue the doctors at the time couldn't heal. The woman was looking to find him while he was moving out to reach in faith for a different miracle. And then Jesus stopped what he was doing and sought her out, saying, "Who touched me?" Disciples looked at him. I'm sure they had a crazy expression on their face. There's hundreds of people around here. What do you mean, who touched you? You know, how are they going to know which one it was? He says, no, we're stopping what we're doing because somebody has approached me in my presence differently. They didn't approach me in the fanfare and just wanting to say, hey, I've met Jesus. I shook his hand. They approached me with faith and expectation because they were diligently seeking me to move. We need to be more like this woman with the issue of blood, who even though she tried worldly ways to solve her issue, there's nothing wrong with seeking cures from doctors. Doctors can help in big ways sometimes, but her ailment was outside their scope of something they could help with. She didn't enter into a state of despair and fear. She turned and sought the Lord. Sometimes we put too much stock into the things of the world that draws our focus. We see things that are in our way, such as a health issue, financial crisis, trauma, heartache, the valleys in our life. We look to the ways of the world to solve these issues. None of these things are necessarily a sinful thing that keeps our view from the Lord, but it's just obstacles that the enemy has placed in our path over time and drawn our focus to keep us from treating the problem or keep us treating the symptoms of the problem rather than looking to the solution. These obstructions keep us seeking the Lord for moving around us. He wants to be in our presence, but we must seek him out. If you want to see the move of God, you have to be looking for it. Where you look is the direction you are going to move in. If you're looking through a world's lens, you will always be working in the ways of the world, working from a defensive position and a position of defeat. Instead, we need to go to an eye-washing station in some senses and have the Spirit of the Lord wash the specks out of our eyes and wash the things that are hindering our view of the Lord, who is the victor over all, and through him we can walk in victory. One of the biggest enemies of spiritual vision is distortion and clarity, not having clarity, not being able to see clearly and perceive the move of God in front of us because we're focused on past pains and failures. If you keep looking through your pain and disappointment, discontentment, it will shape your outlook for what you have for your life and your future, and you will miss the work God is doing in you now. Let's go to Psalms chapter 27, verse 13. I've lost heart lest I had believed that I would see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. It tells me the Lord, our God, is moving in the earth today, right now. We need to seek him out today, not yesterday, not 2,000 years ago, today. Movement also requires room. If you want to move, you need room to move around. It takes more space to move than it does to sit still. Seems self-explanatory. Then why don't we give God the room to move in our life? These distractions are like dry dams that block the flow of spiritual water. The enemy has strategically placed them in front of you to slowly, over time, build up until the flow of movement is almost non-existent. It can cause you to have a critical spirit and say things like, God won't move in my life, nothing good happens to me, or that's great, you've received your healing, but he won't do that for me or my family. If you have that attitude, you're right. Give God the room to move. If you can't see him moving in your life, you're not giving him the room to move, and you're not looking for it. And it's time to start looking. Go to Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 13. And you will seek me and find me when you search for me with all your heart. Proverbs chapter 8, 17. I love those who love me, and those who seek me diligently will find me. Isaiah 55, 6. Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call upon him while he is near. Lastly, Matthew chapter 7, verses 7 and 8. This is Jesus talking. Keep on asking, and you will receive what you ask for. Keep on seeking, and you will find. Keep on knocking on the door, and the door will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, and everyone who seeks finds. And to everyone who knocks, the door will be open. See, all these scriptures talk about seeking out the Lord to enter his presence. If we find ourselves in his presence, we can call upon his name and ask for the promises of God, and he will hear us, and he will answer. When you enter his presence, his word says not in the scriptures I just read, but in other places, that you need to enter into his presence like a child and hold him in remembrance of his promises. See, I have children. I got 2 kids, 3 and 4. They ask for things pretty boldly. They're not timid. They're not scared. When they ask something from their dad, they come to me with confidence and expectation of a clear answer. Whether it be something like, Dad, I want to go outside today. Dad, I want to go for a tractor ride. Can we go for a side-by-side ride today? I'll reply, well, let's go after lunch, or maybe tomorrow, and we're busy today, and that's not going to work out. And they'll say, Dad, you told us yesterday we'd go on a ride today, and I want to go now. See, we need to be like this when we enter in the presence of the Lord with our petitions. If you're praying for sickness, the word of the Lord says Jesus took stripes on his back for our healing and paid for the price on the cross. So reach out in faith and claim that promise for myself and my family. Your word says that you will provide for me. Your word says you will give me strength. Your word says as I go through the valleys of the shadow of death, you are with me. So I'm going to continue to move through these things. We're not staying where we are. We're moving forward in the name of Jesus. Now I got a little testimony to talk about this whenever I sought the Lord and he answered. And some of you are going to remember part of this. I talked about it after Wyatt came home from the hospital. But some of you probably going to be a little new. So talked a little bit about it last message about our troubles with fertility, getting pregnant. And that's just part of the story. See, once we finally got pregnant, had complications quite a bit. Things were looking very good. We went to several doctor's appointments, and she had surgery to keep from losing the baby, and going to Springfield for lots of appointments and going into these situations and hearing the doctors talk about viability of gestational weeks, normal gestational weeks, 40 weeks for full-term pregnancy, and they're talking about, well, you need to get past 25 before they're viable. You get past 27, they have a lot better chance. They have all these conditions that these babies have at these certain levels. And while all this is going on too, coming up on fall, I farm, getting harvest time, and pretty busy time for me. So we got all this going on. Amanda gets on bed rest. She's in Springfield for about a month before Wyatt's born. And since they have a NICU there that would take care of the baby after he was born that they don't have in hospitals that are closer, so she had to stay there in Springfield. In the meantime, I'm running back and forth as much as I can, but still trying to take the crop out. And luckily, we had a lot of people praying for us and a lot of support from family and friends coming around helping us in the field. A lot of friends came and just showed up and said, hey, use me wherever you can. And that's a perfect example of that scripture. Everything the Lord's doing for your good, working towards your good. And that I didn't really realize at the time. Because you're in that middle of that situation, you can't always see things clearly. And one day, things weren't looking very good, looking like they were trying to keep Amanda from going into labor. She'd been at Springfield for a couple weeks. Harvest had already started and all that stress. And I come in here on a Sunday morning. Going to go down there afterwards to see her on that Sunday. Kenny gives a pretty powerful message that morning. I can't tell you what it's about. I don't remember that. But I do remember there's an altar call afterwards. And before this point, it was pretty hard for me to come up to the altar. I had a hard time laying things down for the Lord and totally turning things over to the Lord. Pretty self-reliant guy, brought up on the farm, worked by myself a lot on the farm, and it's just kind of a product of that lifestyle where, somebody tells me I can't do it, I'm going to try. I mean, you guys have worked with me before. We're doing things. I just, Dad has several examples of that. He says, hey, I can't, you ain't going to be able to break this bolt loose. I say, well, let me have at it. I bet I can, And so turning things over isn't always easy. But this was something that was totally out of my control, despite any of my efforts to try to control the little bit that I could. And tugged on my spirit that I needed to come forward. So I came forward, act of faith. Like I said earlier, when you step forward, you come forward, you move towards God, God moves towards you. So I came down right here to this chair, right over here, sat down. Kenny came over, laid his hands on me, anointed oil on me. Josh and Philip came up, prayed with me. I can't tell you what they said because the Spirit met me right there. Washed over me like I had never felt before in my life. And it said, almost audibly, you're going to be all right. You're going to have a healthy baby, and your wife's going to be fine. So, I left church that day and called Amanda. I said, I can't explain this. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I know it's going to happen. I know we're going to be okay. And that doesn't mean that we didn't have struggles afterwards. That doesn't mean that, things didn't just turn around instantly. And we still had a long journey to go. She ended up having Wyatt at 31 weeks, which pretty early. They told us whenever Wyatt was born, he was born 3 pounds, 10 ounces. They told us he'd have to be in the NICU for at least 2 months. They said at least until he would have been full term is when all babies stay in the NICU. That's just rule of thumb. And they're also really concerned about his lungs because preterm babies, especially that early, have a lot of lung issues. They'd given Amanda steroids beforehand to try to combat this, but they were still really concerned about it. Had him on a CPAP machine for the first couple days just to help out with his breathing, but they didn't have to give him any oxygen. They were amazed. They really figured they would. He was on room air the whole time. Then, as things progress, as Wyatt grew, they started introducing new things. And every time they introduce a new thing, they say, be prepared for a setback. All NICU babies, whenever they go through and they introduce something new, whether it's regulating their body temp because they're in an incubator to hold their body temp because it takes more energy than they have at that area to hold their temp. So they keep them at a certain temperature so they don't have to burn energy to do that. And they weigh them by the gram every day. And while this is going on, Amanda finally got to go home after being in the hospital for over a month. And I'm there with Wyatt in the NICU. He's literally fit in palm of my hand, other than his legs. His legs would have went about down to here, but the rest of his whole body, palm of Dad's hand. And I'm just standing there, and it's just me and him in that room. And I say, Lord, you brought him here. You said it was his time to come, so it's up to you to get us through this. You gave me that promise right there, and I'm holding on to it. So they introduce some new things to him. They start taking the incubator off, and he's on a feeding tube, of course, too, because they don't have their suck, swallow, breathe reflex at that age. They can't actually physically eat. So they had it on a feeding tube. And they tell us whenever they take off the heater, be prepared, he's going to have a setback. Wyatt never did. He never lost a gram. The doctors are amazed. They're coming in there every day, twice a day, looking at him. They can't explain it. About a week later, they take him off the feeding tube. He's getting where he's trying to actually have his reflex, and we had to feed him a special way so he didn't just, because he didn't know how to stop and breathe in between. They had to teach us how to do it. And they said, well, he starts doing this, he's going to burn more energy while he's eating, and he's going to go backwards. He's going to lose weight. That's how they measure all that. He never lost a gram. He just kept gaining. There's a few times where he didn't gain any, but about every day he gained at least a gram or two. We were only in the NICU for a month. Wyatt came home. We had special things we had to do for him for a while, but he got to come home, and we got to come home, which was a huge blessing. And 6 months later, we go over for a checkup, and they can't believe he's a preemie. They're like, and then our year checkup too, they say the same thing. What do you mean he was born at 31 weeks? He's a normal year-old. He's trying to walk and crawl and everything. He's meeting his parameters for his weight. That wouldn't happen but the grace of God. So, there's something that hit me too about Dwayne's message that I learned during all that experience afterwards, but it just kind of put it into better words for me. Desire is different than need. God will answer our needs sometimes without answering our desires. I desired a baby boy at 40 gestational weeks, born healthy. But all I needed was a healthy baby. God met that need. I've been debated quite a while about whether to talk about this and what we went through to get Wyatt here. But I've come to realize that if we don't talk about the things the Lord's brought us through, the valleys and low points in our own lives, how are we going to compel others to come into the kingdom? If we don't have any firsthand testimonies of how the Lord moved in our life, can't give any examples of the power, why would any unbeliever, change their position? And it can also encourage someone who's currently going through a hard time, when it seems like everything is stacked against you, to look at the Lord, and He will hear you and He will answer. Last scripture I have for you is Isaiah 43, verse 19. For I'm about to do something new. See, I've already begun. Do you see it? I will make a pathway through the wilderness. I will create rivers in the dry wastelands. There's a new move of God happening in our church and our ministry right now. Can you see it? Between what Kenny's doing in Rwanda, through our outreaches, God's raised up men in our church to help lead whenever Kenny's gone, myself included, that I can tell you, this wasn't something that I asked for. Standing up here in front of you guys today, this isn't something that I thought was going to happen for me, but it's been laid on my life in a big way. It's been spoken over me that I was going to be a leader of my generation in church about a year ago in 3 different separate occasions. Once at the Elijah conference, Bob Newton prayed over me and told me that, and it scared me a little bit, actually. I was like, well, I don't know if I'm ready for that, Lord. And he said, you better get ready. So that's what I've been doing this last year or so, has been trying to seek the Lord and see what He had to do for me in my life and my wife's life. And that's a big reason why you see me joining the media team and doing things like that, and just trying to find a place and find where I fit in the church. Then the second time that was spoken over me was when Vessel was here. He prayed over me, and he told me almost identically phrasing. And I said, well, this got to be the real deal. That's twice, And then a couple months ago, Kenny just said something to me in the back, said, hey, I want you to stay down here. Don't go up to film yet. We're going to have the elders up here. I want to pray. And I said, all right. He didn't tell me he was going to call me up here, and then he called me and Philip up here too. I said, well, I guess it's time. So that's just some examples of, and now that God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to His purposes. In closing, in order to see God move in our life, we have to enter His presence. We have to seek God to have an encounter with Him and seek with expectation. We also must be open to receive. Why is it important to continually seek out God and look to see where He is moving? Because if we don't, we'll not be able to receive the promises for our life. Please stand. If there's anybody here who's been looking for a move of God in their life, and everything seems stagnant and stale, and they just can't see it, they can't see the move, come forward and we'll pray for you. We'll lay hands on you, and the Lord will meet you here.